live. Hey everybody, welcome to our session today. We're going to talk about the brand new Azure Managed Redis. I'm Scott Hunter. I've been at Microsoft for about 17 years. I work on what we call the Azure Developer Experience team. We build a lot of the services that developers want to use, the SDKs and tools. And I'm here with Benjamin from Redis.
Yes, hi Scott. Hi everyone. I'm Benjamin Renaud. I am the CTO for Redis, and we look after this beloved project.
Cool. Okay. That's us. So this is kind of funny. I've been at Microsoft for 17 years, and I actually was in a group that actually launched the first Azure Cache for Redis. Carl DaCosta, who is somewhere in here, he was one of my partners back then, still works on Redis today. But we actually had a non-open source cache at Microsoft called the Azure Managed Cache. It's kind of funny now we have Azure Managed Redis. Kind of goes back in time. And we decided to replace that cache with Redis. And so it might have been one of the first times that Azure actually had an open source platform that we hosted with that. And so we've been doing Redis for about 10 years now, and super excited to announce what we're shipping today. The internet has changed considerably over that last 10 years. You can see here that 2.3 times the same number of users are on the internet that were there 10 years ago, and even more, traffic has doubled 7 times across the internet. And that means there's way more need to have things like a cache to make sure your applications work great with that increased number of users and that increased number of traffic that's running across the internet today. And Redis, when we first started doing Redis back 10 years ago, I really think of it just as a cache. But now, even back then, we started doing some like user session stores back then, but look at all this stuff now. API response caching, database cost reduction, IoT telemetry, semantic caching. There's lots of things that Redis has grown from just being a simple cache to being a multifaceted product that does all kinds of things for developers. For Azure, we are super excited today to introduce the next generation of Redis on Azure, and that's Azure Managed Redis. And so thank you, Redis team. This is actually us taking the exact code from Redis Labs and running that and hosting that in Azure. And I've got a cool video.
Applications need fast access to data with robust throughput to handle high volumes of requests at scale. By adding an in-memory cache, you can lower latency and significantly boost your app performance while offloading traffic on your database. Supercharge your apps with Azure Managed Redis, a fully managed in-memory data store solution designed for the hyperscale cloud, enabling you to build faster and more cost-effective generative AI applications. Beyond caching, Azure Managed Redis tackles your toughest use cases, from improving AI app performance to session management, while integrating with your favorite Azure services. Azure Managed Redis seamlessly delivers the latest Redis innovations across all tiers, including Redis Search and a multimodal data model to go beyond key value with JSON, Vector, time series, and more. Backed by up to a 5 nines of availability SLA with active-active geo-replication, Azure Managed Redis is prepared to meet the most pressing demands of all your mission-critical applications. With a few clicks, you can tailor your memory and performance to deploy a fully provisioned instance that best fits your needs, optimizing for costs and resource demands. With numerous compliance offerings, enterprise-level security, and password-free authentication with Microsoft Entra ID, you can trust Azure Managed Redis to protect your data. Start building fast apps faster today with Azure Managed Redis.
Cool, that's awesome. And this is where it gets amazing. If I look at this journey from the original Redis that we have in Azure today to Azure Managed Redis, which we're introducing today, 15 times faster with the same memory sizes. Huge performance improvement. 67% lower costs. When I show some of the graphs later, you're going to be blown away by how much cheaper it is, how much faster it is. Active geo replication, and you don't have to buy our enterprise tier to get that now. You get that across all of our tiers. As the videos mentioned, vector storage, search, and semantic caching all built in. You got 3 nines with if you're doing the active geo replication. We also have a feature where you can actually have active zone replication as well, or redundancy. That's when you're in a data center and we have multiple zones. We can actually have you in two zones at the same time. Intra ID is super important for us. You know, security is a big part of Microsoft, and we don't want you having to have credentials for your Redis caches. We'd rather you use managed identity inside of Azure so you don't have to have those things. You don't have to go to the marketplace to get the tiers anymore. You get actual support from us, and we back that support up with Redis themselves. And we have brand new .NET experience as well for our .NET customers. And with that, well, I'll say this: I think this is you, Benjamin. This is not me.
That's right.
Here you go, sir.
Thanks, Scott. And so what you get today when you come to Azure is you get the real Redis. Azure today is the only major cloud provider to offer Redis as a first-party service. You can also use Redis Cloud if you're interested in other options. But on Azure, you get the real Redis as a first-party service. And you get the latest. And you will keep getting the latest. You will keep getting the fastest. Today you get 7.4. 7.4 has some exciting new things in it, including hash field exploration, which was our #1 requested feature of all times, ever. This was the one thing that everyone wanted. We have it in 7.4. As always, this version of Redis is faster than the previous one. We keep going faster. We keep doing a better job for you guys. We have a bunch of performance improvements in 7 that are exciting. In particular, we have in 7.4 the ability to, of course, handle vectors and vector calculations, anything that you need to do to create a RAG application. And not surprisingly, Redis is the fastest vector database in the world by some margin. And we have it deployed at some exciting customers. Azurion is using it to build a customer engagement platform. Bank of America is using it also to develop an application for their banking customers. Relevance.ai uses it. There's another customer, unfortunately can't say the name, but they're deploying 4 terabytes of data at real-time speeds. So that's a really impressive deployment, something we're quite proud of. And you get all of this in Azure Managed Redis. What you will see in terms of the core benefits of Redis Enterprise and Azure Managed Redis is that we've designed it to use the full capabilities of what Azure offers. So in particular, we run the right number of Redis instances for the right amount of cores with a single entry point, a single database image for all of your clients. And all of this is completely transparent and gives you a single endpoint. If you want to learn a little more about how we do that, there is a blog by Balan Subramanian who goes into detail about how that's done, and I recommend that as a read if you're interested in the nitty-gritty of real-time databases. Of course, Scott's mentioned active-active, so this is the most tested, most mature, most powerful active-active capability in the field today. It's running in production with countless customers and gives you local read and write latencies and the best 5.9 availability across regions. We also have Redis Flex. So Redis Flex is the ability for Redis to use both RAM and SSD. My favorite little anecdote about all this, some of you will have heard it, but I'll say it anyway, is that SSD today offers latencies that are lower than what RAM was when Redis got started. So that really opens up a world of possibilities that's really exciting. In particular, having a much bigger cache for much cheaper. And so what that means means that instead of going through a lot of work in your application to figure out exactly what you want to cache, make sure that the expirations are all right, make sure that the evictions happen on time, you can now start caching much more, potentially your entire database. So with Redis Flex, you get a fraction of the cost of RAM with a few performance trade-offs, but really typically nothing that's going to be very, that's going to hurt you. So this is very exciting. You get all of this, but of course you get the promise of the Redis roadmap and everything we keep adding to the product. And that is very soon coming out is Redis 8. Redis 8 will have a lot of the built-in modules that come with Redis will be now natively integrated in the core Redis as native data types. You'll get Redis for AI, which gives you a suite of services that are directly built on this vector database capability I've talked to you about. So it will include things like a semantic cache, which of course, Redis is all about caching. And now that Redis is able to do as a vector database, it's a perfect marriage of capabilities. And additional features that will let you develop real-time RAG applications. And finally, of course, performance. Performance, we are continuing to improve performance. As I said, 7 is a big leap over 8. 8 is going to be an even bigger leap in terms of performance and capability. And so we are thrilled about our partnership with Microsoft. And let me now hand it back to Scott, who will take it from here.
I was just thinking of semantic caching, and we have another service in Azure called the GenAI Gateway.
Yep.
And it supports Redis for semantic caching for your OpenAI calls as well. So it's a way of the developers don't have to think about it in this particular case because they just make the OpenAI calls to our GenAI Gateway. The Redis is sitting behind that, and it just works. And so it's more than just using raw Redis. We actually have it integrated in more of our products, and we probably will more over time as well. So
that's fantastic.
But thank you for the great partnership, and I'm super excited about the release today.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks, everybody.
So this is one of the coolest slides that I can think of, which is literally he was just talking about SSD-based caching, and so you can see we have a flash optimized SKU here, memory optimized, which is going to be more memory, less CPU, balanced, more kind of a mix of both memory and CPU, and then compute where you're more CPU. But the cool thing here is notice that across all these SKUs, at any of these tiers, you get all the features. Now you're in a mode where you basically choose how much CPU and how much memory you want, and you can get all the features of Redis. To me, that's the coolest part about the release today is the fact that we're on the official Redis, and as you can see right here, it's very easy. Just choose your memory and choose your CPU, and you're off and running. So you can see here, this is what he was just describing before. It's a mix of using basically storage plus RAM. Your cache is going to be a little bit slower, but as he said, storage is now faster than RAM was probably 10 years ago. And so this gives you a better price. Next in line, you can see here, basically it's 1:8 CPU to memory ratio. So you're going to get a great cache, big sizes. You don't need to use as much CPU. And then finally, this is more of your balance where you're kind of 1 to 4 CPU ratio, great for most workloads. And this is the crazy one. If you need maximum throughput, we can give you a 1 to 2 CPU to memory ratio. And the best thing, as I said before, is these are available through a whole pile of SKUs that are available here. This is super cool. We mentioned on the first slide that performance is way up from the current existing Redis cache here. And so you can see our old SKUs, standard and premium, are on the far left here. And notice that even for memory optimized, balanced to compute, every one is faster. So basically every SKU of the new Redis is faster than the old SKUs. And so I think that's a huge thing. 15 times higher performance than the existing cache. So awesome. This is one of my favorite slides here is 3.1 times faster creation times. I don't know if anybody in the room has created a Redis cache. They take a long time to create. And so these create a lot faster. I was actually working on a demo a couple days ago, and I was happy that I was able to get the entire app in under 20 minutes compared to over an hour before. And that same capability enables you to also scale your caches at a faster rate as well. And so huge optimized performance on the creation and scaling. And then we talked about this a little bit as well, active geo replication. This is for the scenarios when you want to have your massive, most availability of your cache. You put a cache in a couple regions around the world, and using Azure, that means your app can actually use the cache nearest to it. It doesn't have to go across the pond in some cases to go do that. And so you can see we can synchronize up to 5 instances for geo-replication, and write to multi-writes in the group. And so you get to choose, as I said before, this is really about global applications, high availability, and copying lots of data. And so super cool feature. This is how you get all the 9s on the Redis cache. And so this is what you want to turn on for the highest reliability. You can see here, 99.999 with active geo-replication. If you don't do active geo-replication, we're going to give you the zones in the data center. I will warn people, all data centers don't have enough capacity for that. Be honest about that. And notice it's on by default with no additional cost. So you're going to get better reliability right out of the box with no additional cost. Next is, he mentioned before, a couple of the new things you can actually do with Redis. You have things like time series. This is great for doing like IoT data. You've got things like query engine, well actually probabilistic, which is great for doing deduping of large data sets. You've got query engine, which we're going to show in one of the demos in a little bit, where you can actually query some stuff. And of course, we have lots of JSON data today, and so it kind of gives you that NoSQL document stuff. And then Redis AI, we're going to show this too as well. Vector storage and vector search. I mentioned before as well, you can actually use some of this, the semantic caching parts of this today with our GenAI gateway for OpenAI. And so, this is super easy to use as well. We're going to do a demo that says vector search. And so we were able to take an existing application and easily just go chunk some data into this and write queries against it. I mentioned semantic caching before. That is, I don't want the query to go to my OpenAI instance. The queries look alike, and so we can actually cache those and bring those right back. And then great for, again, is storing chats in memory. Okay. Maybe. Once again, this is kind of cool. Again, this is showing the pricing. And look at here. Here is the premium SKU before. And notice that memory optimized, balanced, and even compute are almost all cheaper than our previous premium. The compute is just a little hair higher, but that's for your maximum highest performance cache. And so the pricing is better, the performance is better. This is just an awesome improvement in our cache. And I love this. No longer need to upgrade to get our latest features. All the features available across all the SKUs. If you're a developer and you don't need high availability, we can turn that off and give you a very cheap cache for doing development. And you saw before that whole thing of memory and CPU, those options. It's the best set of options we've ever given you before. And you can scale either CPU or memory independently. It's now your choice. Okay, developer experience. This is super important to me as well. Probably the most important thing to us is at Microsoft, we want to make sure that people that are using our cloud are using it in the most secure way. I mentioned this before, managed identity. This is where we can do passwordless access to your cache. In a perfect world, our applications today would not use passwords anywhere. We're in the process inside of Microsoft at Azure, making sure that all of our services support this. And so super excited to see that we have support for this in the Redis cache. Next is .NET. .NET is our biggest group of developers that use our cloud today, probably. And you can see there's a bunch of cool things here. ASP.NET has a simple feature for caching pages. I'll show a demo of that in a little bit. You add an attribute to your page, and your page is cached. We have a new hybrid cache that ships in .NET 9, which is shipped 2 weeks ago. It simplifies the programming model for using the cache. Before you would do something like see if something's in the cache. If it's not in the cache, go do an operation. You end up with a big block of code to do that. Now you can write that literally in one line of code. And we've got support for semantic kernel, which is an AI set of extensions for .NET that also support Redis. And you can see here as well, we've got great support in VS Code. We have a VS Code extension, which will let you look at your actual data in your cache right from VS Code, even delete stuff. And so great developer experience. This is awesome too. Because we have a partnership with Redis Labs, you can see that we actually, if you call support, we will actually use support all the way to Redis Labs when necessary. So you'll call the exact support you call today, and if necessary, they will get in touch with people in Redis Labs. So we've got the best support for Redis probably of anybody, I would guess, on the planet. And then, 22 plus regions in preview, which is huge, and all regions supported for GA. And then I love this too is, if you're playing with the public preview, which is available today, there's plenty of open source tools that you can use to actually move your data from an existing Azure Redis cache to the new managed Redis cache. By the time we get to GA, we want to have a great first-party experience in the portal. So you can just go to the portal and say, move my cache to an Azure managed Redis. And then finally, post-GA, we hope to get to a point where it's just one click and you're ready to go to the new cache. Our hope over time would be that we will migrate all the customers off of the existing Redis caches to the new managed cache so they get the benefit of having the best performance, best features, and so on. And so let's do a quick demo of some of this stuff. So I will apologize for one thing on the demos. I would ask people to take a picture of the slide. The barcode is the source repo. If people don't know, on the West Coast, we had a huge windstorm yesterday, and it knocked out all the power where Microsoft campus is. And so the team was supposed to push the button to push this public, and so you might get a repo doesn't exist. If you just wait in the next hour, it's supposed to go online. Waiting for people to actually get to a place that has power, they can push the actual button. Basically, all of Redmond, Bellevue, Woodinville, all the places close to us are all out of power. Microsoft buildings do have power, though. So the app here is an app that's doing a couple things. It's in .NET, we have this new technology we just shipped as well called Aspire for building cloud-native apps. And we have a full shopping store built on this. And it takes advantage of a couple of features. It's going to use hybrid cache to cache some of the records from the database. It's going to do output caching to cache the screens of data. It's going to do use session state. That's how it's going to do its shopping cart. So it's going to put all your shopping cart stuff in a Redis database because you don't need to do a on-disk database for that kind of stuff. It's got a leaderboard so you can see the most popular products. And as we look at a product, we're going to use some of the vector stuff that we talked about before to go show you similar things. If you like that product, you might like this thing as well. It's got the Intra ID by default, so basically the app is using no credentials at all. It's using managed identity, and it does have the geo-replication turned on. And so as I said, sometime in the next hour, the barcode will actually work. But you'll see that basically we've got 2 Redis caches here. We got one that we're going to use to do page replications and some of the data from the SQL database. And we have another Redis cache that we're going to use for some of the semantic stuff. So let's flip over here. And well, I'll actually jump to the browser. So this is the repo. And the repo is super cool. All you have to have on your machine is one of our tools called AZD. That's the Azure Developer CLI. With that tool, you can basically clone this repo on your machine and type a single command, and we'll deploy the application to the cloud for you. I do want to point out there is one thing we're going to recommend is going to recommend using Australia East. That's the area that has lots of availability for this kind of tech right now. But the app, fully yours to go grab and play with, and it's going to go show off and use a lot of the things that we talked about. So let's jump in and take a look at the app. Okay. So here's the app in Azure, already deployed, ready to go. And you can see I've got a container registry. I've got a couple of, here's one of my Redis caches. Here's my other Redis cache. And it's got some other bits here. For fun, I will go use this tool. This is one of the tools from the Redis folks. And I can go look at the caches that I have here. And you can see that I've got my main cache, which I'm going to use to store my pages and some of my product information. And then I've got another cache, which has some of the modules like the Redis search enabled on it and Redis JSON enabled on it. And I'm going to do that for doing some of the similarity queries for the app. So let's go take a look at the app. It is an Aspire app, and so if you know what Aspire is, it's our cloud-native .NET technology. Here the app is running in the cloud, but I've got the page up here right here. And so let's go take a look at a couple things. So as I am in the page here, this entire page is cached. We want to make sure the store is super fast, and so we want to cache all the contents of this page. This is using a feature called output caching. All I've got to do is put an attribute in my source code, and all this will get cached. Also, as I drill into a product, it's cached as well. So we cache just the information here that you see, so I don't have to make that database call every single time I bring the page up. We want to make the store as fast as possible. I can see some of this. If I go jump in the tool over here, let's go look at my regular cache here. And it should show data. Where's the refresh? Where is refresh? Right there. There we go. So if I look in here, I've got a couple things. I clicked on 2 of the products, and this is the product data that was put in the cache. I can click over here, zoom in, and you'll see some of the content from that cache. I mentioned I cached the entire web page. There's the web page all cached for you. And I can show you how that actually works in the source code. These are both super simple. If I go over here, a couple things I want to show off first is this is the actual app. And I've got the 2 caches. And so I've got my main cache. I've got my vector search cache. And all I've got to do is, this is using Aspire, which hides all the credential kind of stuff for me. I just basically reference those 2 things in my main application. And I'm using a new Aspire 9 feature where I can say wait for. We wait for these things to boot up and be ready to call before the app comes online. But inside the actual app, you're going to see that all I've got to do here is this is the output cache. So in a .NET application, all you've got to do is add Redis output cache to your application, and then you can take any web page and put it in the cache. Super simple, doesn't require a lot of code. If I go into the actual product page, all you're going to see is I have an attribute right here at the top of the page. And this tells me how many seconds I want to cache that page. So super easy. You write 3 or 4 lines of code in a .NET application, add an attribute to your app, and you've got that cached instance. If I go back, I mentioned before, we're caching these things as well. These are the actual parts of the actual page. And so what I'll do here is show you what that looks like. This is using some of the new features that we have in .NET 9. This is the hybrid cache. And notice I just say get or create async. Before, what I would do is I would actually say, Redis cache, try to find this. And if it didn't return that, I would then go, OK, it didn't find it, so I'm going to go and make the database query to go get that data. Then I'm going to write the code to put that in the Redis cache, and then continue on. In this with this new API that we have in .NET 9, I just say get or create. I give it the key to go find. And if not, as the second parameter, I can basically pass the link to the code to go get that. And so you can see what it does here is it says get or create. And then what will happen is if it returns null, it will then go and actually make the database call to return the item. And there's no code to go put it in the cache or whatever. That's just done automatically. So it's a single one-line way of getting your content from the database. So let's go back over here, and let's take a look at a couple of things that we can do as well. Let's go sign in now. So I'm going to log in here. We'll do a cheat up here. And so now I'm logged in, and now I have the ability to put things into the actual cart. And so what I'm going to do here is let's go put some of these black boots in the cart. There we go. I'll put one of these things in the cart too. Need to have one of these. And now I can go look at my shopping cart. And once again, historically, what you might do for shopping carts is put these types of things in databases. That requires a lot of code to go and store stuff in databases, delete it when you're done. These are exact kinds of things that caches are great for. And so we're actually putting all this data in the cache. If I go look over here, we are going to find a couple things here. Here's my cart. And inside my cart, you're going to see we've got basically the list of all the stuff that I have inside of that cache. And so I'm using this as my database for my shopping cart. Super cool way to do that. Something else that's interesting on this page is notice that when I looked at those products, I got stuff that looks similar. And this is using the semantic caching that we mentioned before. It's using some of the AI features that we have here. If I go look at, let's go look at something else. The boots showed a different type of boots. Let's try something else that I've not tried before. This is kind of cool. Similar products. And so how do we do this? This is using the vector search that we have in Redis. And so if I go back and look at my cache, I'm going to jump up and flip and look at a different cache. I'll look at the vector database. And you're going to see a bunch of items in here. There's basically an item for each of the products that we have in the store. And if I drill into one of these, you're going to see some of the stuff that you would expect, that description, and then you're going to see our embedding. Of course, it's stuff that humans can't really understand or see, and it doesn't really matter. And so I'll show in a second what we do is we basically loop through, as products are put in the store, we go and run some OpenAI code to convert that text into an embedding. And And the embeddings are really cool. We're using OpenAI for this. And it's not just comparing the words. If you had two products with the same words, that's not what we wanted to actually match. We wanted to actually look at the actual contents of what the description is and find descriptions that are semantically the same, not necessarily that have words that are exactly the same. If you went and play with the app and look at the contents, you'll find they're not too far apart. And so how do we do that? And so if I go over here and I look here, this is literally a job that we run that basically loops through all the products, pulls out all the data from the database, and then it's going to go and make the embeddings and stick the embeddings into Redis. And here is the actual code down here that is going to go and use OpenAI to convert the text into a float, technically, that makes that work. So not a lot of source code, and we're using Redis to go and do that. So the next question you might ask is, how do we know when to go find those similarities? And here we are. We're actually making queries using some of those new capabilities in Redis. We can go query and say, find things that are similar to this thing. And then we just basically populate the list right here with those things. And that's how we build that screen. And so that's a super cool feature that we have as well. A couple other things that are cool that we do is I can go back into the app here, and there's a top products thing, but there's nothing actually in here yet. So let's go do that. I like those. I kind of like these things. I like these a couple times. I like that. We're doing this also with Redis. So I don't have a need to go store this in a database either. I can use Redis to go store this. And Redis does all the sorting and all this work for us. That's how it knows how to go do and show me the one at the top that's got this. Once again, if I go back to my cache, we're going to find that I've got these things stored here now too. You see a sorted set. It's a Redis feature. And so I'm basically sticking the items into the sorted set. And that's how I actually make that entire list of my leaderboard work. Once again, using a Redis feature, not trying to stick this junk into a traditional relational database. And I think the last thing that I have to show here is I can go to my shopping cart. I do have a web glitch here where I've got some funny stuff here that you can't really see the numbers and stuff like that. But let's go do that. I'm not going to check out. But that's just a quick run through of a whole pile of the features that we have in the new cache. The last thing I can show on the cache is performance. And so if I scroll down on the repo, we ran some internal tests at Microsoft where we basically ran, this is showing, sorry, it's blurry and yucky. Basically, the top bar chart here is showing when I just went to the SQL database and did not actually use Redis cache. I had about a 900 millisecond return rate. When I used the new cheapest SKU of the Redis cache, I knocked that performance in half. So this one here is going to show that coming back in literally 500 milliseconds. And so basically, we doubled the performance without hitting our database. And so that's showing how the database can actually be helped by the cache. So I'll jump back here. And so next steps. This is available in preview today. Please go check it out. We have a couple things you can scan here as well. There's sessions on AI and Redis. There's going to be sessions on next-gen retail with Managed Redis. And we are in the booth as well. And so please come find the team in the booth. Please come check out the other sessions on Redis. And please try out this stuff. It's awesome. And with that, we have like 5 minutes if the team wants to answer any questions. Any brave souls want to go to the mic and ask a question? No brave souls. Somebody's got to have some questions. Come to the mic, please.
I just have could you go to the Azure portal and just look over the offerings for Redis? Just to see what is available right now.
I can try. So the question was, can I go to the portal and see what is offered? Gotta love the internet performance here. See if I find the right one. That's Marketplace. Does not make me happy. Huh? I know that, Carl. You just heard me. I said it's not going to make me happy. I didn't even try to go to the portal, to that thing. No results were found, folks.
Listed under Azure Cache Redis still.
And which one would I want, folks?
Go to Azure Cache Redis. It's listed as different SKU options under Azure Cache Redis.
Okay. Oh, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? There you go. Is that what you're looking for? Cool. Guys, you don't have it. I can't use the new name yet? Any other questions?
Yeah, we've got a lot of activity online. I think people are saying groundbreaking for sure, great in questions as well. You know, great blend of Redis offerings and prices. People also love vector search and RAG, and just a lot of excitement. We've got a few questions whenever we need to end it, no worries. But one of them is, are point-in-time backups available?
Right.
You can export manually. So you can export.
You want to go to the mic? So it's.
Great.
Hey folks, I'm Kyle. I'm a PM on the team. So you can export data on demand. You can export a copy of data. It's called an RDB file, and you can automate that as well using Azure Automation. But there's no like built-in take a point-of-time recovery every 30 minutes feature. So it's kind of up to you on when you want to do that.
Got a few more. I don't know which one I want to answer.
All right. A few more questions. One is on using API management instead of Azure Cache Redis. So a cool thing you can do there, which was mentioned earlier by Scott, is you can actually use Azure Managed Redis as a semantic cache as a part of API management or as a normal cache. So those plug in together really well. So it's kind of a better together story there rather than an either or.
Two more.
Okay, question on automated feed to Fabric to keep cache data. I don't believe we have integration with Fabric as of yet. So stay tuned for that, but I don't believe that's something that's available right now. And then if we use TF to configure current setup, we have to make a new resource and retarget our app to use the new Azure Managed Redis resource. Yeah, so right now for migration, you have to create a new resource, switch it over in your application. Our plan by GA and by post-GA is to have migration tools that will migrate the DNS as well. So you actually can keep your app targeted to the same place, and we'll migrate it on the back end. So look for that coming in the next 6 or so months.
That's it.
Cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, y'all.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Benjamin.
Yep.